Well, this information these videos that you have played are news to the minority. This information, as it has been the common discourtesy of this subcommittee to not provide the minority with information other than the time and the meeting place. It is really unfortunate that, Chairman, I'm going to put this on you because you are the chairman of this committee, that you're refusing to be honest and upfront with the minority as to what exactly are we going to hear, or what is the purpose of the meeting, and second guessing our law enforcement officers, 3 years after the incident seems to me like a very, very cheap shot. It's like spitting in their face after they gave up so much. So many of them had major injuries that were suffered under the violence of this angry mob that was unleashed on the U.S. Capitol. And while the first video was played, you said the time was around 1:30 when these pipe bombs were discovered and when, or at least one of them, when the perimeter was set. At 1:30, and I had to look back at my own personal records of where I was and what I was doing at 1:30 that night or that afternoon. And I can tell you that at 1:30, several buildings of the Capitol had already been forcibly entered, breached by this angry mob. So to say, to the law enforcement community, you should have been here instead of over there. You should have been over there instead of over there. We didn't have enough officers. We didn't have, the officers that were present were here with their own armed with their own bravery to defend themselves. They had barely the equipment that it takes in order for them to handle the mob that was unleashed on them by the former president. Mr. Black, thank you for your presence here. I'm going to ask you, our colleagues in the minority have repeatedly asked Director Wray and the FBI to testify publicly as to the status of the investigation into the pipe bombs and why it continues after 3 years. Is this the policy you had to observe over the years in your career as a law enforcement professional?
As far as the investigation taking 3 years or more?
No, as far as giving public testimony as to an update of how the investigation is going.
Generally, ongoing investigations aren't discussed.
Why is that?
It can be counterproductive not only to that investigation, but to future investigations as well.
What do you mean counterproductive?
If certain investigative techniques are being undertaken to identify a suspect, for instance, if those types of techniques are divulged, that suspect can change their behavior, destroy evidence, and then again, that information is available for future crimes.
So not only could it hurt the current investigation, but it could compromise any future investigation if you're having to deal with that same person, correct?
That same person or type of crime.
The same suspect?
Yes.
Because they would change their MO, and it would be make it that much more difficult for you.
They could, yes.
And would take any action to cover their crime.
Correct.
As far as we know, the perpetrator could be sitting here in the room with us, correct?
Their identity is currently unknown.
It could be the perpetrator who planted these bombs could be watching us on TV, right?
Perhaps.
How could revealing this information put this U.S. Capitol in danger in the future? Specific information.
Investigative tactics and techniques are usually not publicized, as I mentioned earlier, so that the suspects, if one has been developed, wouldn't destroy evidence or change their behavior that would render those investigative techniques less viable.
Some individuals, including members of this institution, have questioned the authenticity of the pipe bombs found at the DNC and the RNC. However, FBI statements firmly state that both devices were viable and could have been detonated, resulting in serious injury or death. Based on your years of service, individuals in government make unfounded allegations that the FBI lying about a particular investigation. Does that pose any challenges to the FBI?
Public perception is important. The men and women that are doing the work every day.
Why is that? Why is that perception so important?
Law enforcement relies on information and a good relationship with the public and communities they serve. Any kind of negative publicity is to be expected sometimes, but you work through that to get to the logical conclusion and justice.
So by breaking that trust, we compromise any potential witness that could come forward and give us information.
The public should be certain that any viable information will be accepted and followed through to its logical conclusion.
Okay, thank you, and I yield back.